going to go ahead and start my particular workshop here. It is called Civic Engagement and Field Study. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I know it takes a lot of personal will to want to come out here and invest your time, so I am very grateful. And so again, it's called Civic Engagement and Field Study, Understanding Service Learning. That's what I'll be talking about today. And that's the first thing I'm going to address is I want to give you all a little bit about me and who I am. I'm actually a fourth-year psychology and social behavior major, and I'm also the intern for the field study program within itself in the School of Social Ecology. For those of you who were here for the keynote address, we heard a lot about field study and what it means today. And we also heard about some of the students who had maybe some misconceptions about the program or who weren't very too familiar with the program prior to entering. And so I wanted to kind of bring that perspective as a student in the School of Social Ecology. Actually, when I started interning for the field study program itself, I came in with my perspective as a student in the School of Social Ecology who does feel that there are some kind of ambiguities to the program or some things that are unclear. And I actually overheard y'all speaking over there saying how y'all were transfers and that you came in as transfers. I'm actually a transfer student myself, and so if I'm currently in my fourth year and I came in my third year and I'll be graduating in June, that really gave me a limited amount of time as a student to really digest what the whole program means, what I can do for the program. And so currently I'm in my last quarter and I'm actually doing my field study now. I'm doing it at the Disability Service Center here on campus. So I'm very lucky to be working with Lori and the program itself there. It's given me a lot of opportunities, but again, I just want to point out to the fact that I am very mindful of the fact that particularly as transfers, and not necessarily though as transfers, sometimes we may not be too familiar with the field study program itself, and we want to be extra careful that we do incorporate that sense of civic learning, civic engagement as we engage with our community partnerships, because these partnerships are potentially very powerful and they do kind of give us a platform for us to make a difference, make change, and be sure that we pick up some sort of experience before we graduate. And again, I think that that's something that is very special about the school in general, is that it offers this opportunity for us, and so we want to be sure that we maximize it. I think that's one of the themes today, is to connect and maximize the field study program in general. So I will be hopefully clarifying some of that, what it means to engage in civic learning and through service learning, and I hope to do that after this presentation. And again, that was one of my main goals as a field study intern this year, was just to facilitate the overall process of the field study program, to make sure that it's something that for students who are having difficulty learning what it is that the whole program is about, making sure that they understand that this is a powerful connection and that it does have potential to make a great difference in the community. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start. This is, again, service learning. For experienced students, some students begin their SE 195 already understanding the foundations for this type of classroom community experience through their own personal histories of volunteering and engaged citizenship. So this means that some students have already some conception, some perspective of what it means to be involved with the field study program. However, there are students who, kind of like me prior to transferring to UCI, we were kind of confused as to what SE 195 was in the first place. And so I wanted to touch on that for some of the current and prospective field study students who are a little bit unclear. Well, these are the type of students who feel that this is a territory that is unfamiliar and untested, and so we kind of have to form our own conception of the SE 195, the field study program. With that being said, let's talk a little bit about what service learning is. Service learning was designed to facilitate the development of civic capacity and the types of knowledge, skills, and motivation that can allow us students to become fully contributing members to our communities. And that's kind of a little overview as to the workshop itself. Again, service learning, I do want to emphasize that it is an opportunity to engage with our community. With that being said, we're gonna keep pushing the message of service learning, and I do want to emphasize that there is a potentially transformative power in the partnerships between social ecology students and their community organizations. A successful partnership within the field study program is one that can be where social ecology students follow the key steps of entering and engaging in service learning experiences appropriately. And I will be discussing that towards the end of the workshop. So again, what is service learning? Well, by definition, students engage in community service activities with intentional academic and learning goals, which are opportunities for reflections that connect to their academic disciplines. That's what you would probably find in dictionary. This is, again, the definition. And if you want to go more into depth, I'll even go on as far as dissecting service learning itself. The hyphen between service and learning emphasizes that these two facets are interdependent and dynamic and vary from other forms of traditional learning, and that the focus is placed upon connecting course content with actual experience. Now, this is kind of a little wordy. I do want to point that out. But essentially what this is saying is that service and learning, there's a hyphen between the two words that kind of connects them together because it acknowledges that both of these aspects of field study are interdependent. And so you have that aspect of the service, and with it, you bring the learning together and you kind of connect it. But if you want to have it be simplified, quite simply, service learning is a different way of learning. And again, we're going to be touching on some of this as of now. Unlike traditional classrooms, students involved in field study are active participants in creating knowledge. And I will say that I can provide my own testimony being a field study student currently, is that I'm finding that I am, in fact, creating my own sense of knowledge. Therefore, the role of the teacher and the learner are more fluid and less rigid. Again, this is very true. You'll find that some professors give you a lot of liberty, and it is up to you to really go and engage with your community partner site and make out of it what you can. Ultimately, the faculty guides students as they integrate intellectual knowledge with community interactions through the process of reflection. And really, I would even go as far as arguing that our research paper that we incorporate with the field study process that we do have to do as part of our required duties as field study and social ecology students is that we reflect on what it is that we are doing with our partners and how we can reflect on that to make sure that we are maximizing that particular experience. I'm going to go on and say that service learning should enable you to intentionally use your intellectual capacities and skills to address community problems. Again, a big point of that paper is to address some very specific community problems. And I've heard cases in which students, like the example that one of the keynote speakers addressed this morning, something as simple as addressing the fact that there may be something like a small toilet, a big toilet in a preschool may seem as something that is not too relative or too important, but it is essentially a problem that could use some fixing. And so these are small examples of what it means to kind of address these community problems and how us as field study students have the potential to make some changes. With that being said, service should be distinguished from volunteerism. It's two separate things. Volunteerism is often performed as charity work in which volunteers frequently conceive themselves as being above the person or group they are assisting. Their assistance is considerably one-sided. What this is saying is that field study is by no means charity work, and it's different than just simply volunteering. When you're volunteering, you think about, oh, I'm going to go, just a quick example would probably be something that you do, particularly maybe on a holiday. Say it's Thanksgiving, you want to go and help at a food bank, you're going to help feed the homeless. Maybe that's an example of that. But you'll notice that with this example, as necessary as it is particularly one-sided. We need to separate volunteerism from the field study program. It's not so much volunteering, again, it is service. And what service means is that, in contrast, solidarity work shifts the focus from the volunteer to the community and identifying strengths, assets, and resources that can lift and sustain individuals and groups over the long term. This is the purpose of field study, is to make sure that throughout the long term, it's not just one-sided. We have to be sure that both the students and the community partners are benefiting from the relationship, from that connection that they build. Through solidarity service, people empathetically work together for the betterment of everyone. And so really that's what field study is all about. It's not about volunteering or just getting rid of that time that you have to, those 100 hours that you have to complete by the end of your time. It's also about creating a sense of solidarity work, meaning that when you're working through solidarity, you're helping each other out. And when you're working through solidarity, you're able to identify the particular person's problem, and they also identify with your needs. So it's a collaborative effort, and I do want to emphasize that because I feel that is very important to point out, especially for those people that are a little bit skeptical about, oh, am I really doing a lot with my 100 hours, or am I really just kind of donating my time? Is this something I kind of have to do? No, again, if you're working through solidarity, you could potentially create a big difference, and it's kind of a neat connection because it works both ways. In essence, you learn how to become an educated community service member and problem solver through serving the community and reflecting on the meaning of that service. And this is the essence of field study. I'm going to go on to say, so what? Notice the title of the slide. It's Me, Myself, and SE 195. Me, Myself, and Field Study. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to you as students? This workshop is open to all students. So if we're going to go a little self-centered on this situation, I'm going to go ahead and ask, so what? What's in it for me? What's in it for me as a social ecology student? What's in it for me as a field studies student? And I'm going to share with you some facts that may make you realize how important it is to have this field study program and how we are benefiting as students having this program. Some neat perks of having field study is that learning and serving should essentially allow you to provide meaningful service to a community agency or organization as you simultaneously gain new skills, knowledge, and insight. And if that's not enough, I'm going to go ahead and continue by saying that many studies indicate that students who participate in community-based learning realize greater educational and learning gains than their peers. Now, this is again what the studies have found is that students who are engaged in community service or in service learning, like field study, well, they find that their academic and social self-concept is higher. They tend to be more moral and ethical in their decision-making. Their tolerance and empathy for others is improved. Their understanding of societal and community issues is broadened. Their cognitive and problem-solving skills are more advanced, and their interest in influencing positive social and political change is increased. So look, that's about 6 bullet points, and those are all significant points as to why it is so important to have the field study program for us as students. These are ways in which we are benefiting again. I'm going to continue on to say that a successful partnership, again, is one that can be one in which social ecology students follow the key steps of entering and engaging service learning experiences appropriately. So I'm going to talk a little bit about of the prep work that should go into preparing for your field study opportunity. One of these things to address is thoughtful preparation for community-based learning on the part of all involved dramatically increases the chances of successful results. What this is saying here is that, yes, it is our responsibility as students to make sure that we prepare, but it's solidarity work, meaning that the community partner has to ensure that they're also ready to work with you. You have to be conscious of that. Some tips before starting your field study, if you haven't yet done so, is that some tips that we can consider come from the Community Campus Partnerships for Health. This is called the CCPH, and they have outlined a number of principles of good practice for effective partnerships. Principles that delineate responsibilities shared by universities and communities. Again, this is social ecology I'm addressing. And the view of CCPH, partners in effective community-based learning situations exhibit the following traits: agreed upon goals and values on how to progress towards accomplishing those goals, mutual trust, respect, authenticity, and commitment, intentional working out of identified strengths, addressing areas that need improvement, a balance of power, and a sharing of resources. And then that continues to say open and accessible communication, collaborative process established through the interaction of all, feedback for improvement, sharing credit for accomplishments, and commitment to spending the time it takes to develop these elements. Again, these are all traits that we need for efficiency. And again, these aren't meant just for us as field study students, they're also open to the efforts of the community partners themselves. So again, prior to entering your field study, it is important to be mindful of these traits prior to entering your service learning opportunity. After entering, it is important to consider how to go about engaging in your service learning experience. Now, I feel that speaking about from my own personal experience, a lot of this does depend on the student, and it does depend on the community partner that you're working with. It depends on a lot of factors. What's your major? What are you focusing on? What do you plan to continue doing after you receive your degree? These things are going to vary with each student, so every particular experience that one goes through is going to be significantly different. But it is important that we consider some of the things that we all kind of share in unity prior to entering and then engaging in your field study. And one way to ensure that you are engaged with your field study is to acknowledge your responsibilities and rights. So that's two of the things that I'm going to address, starting with your legal responsibilities. Some responsibilities worth highlighting are legal ones. You must be sure that at your field study site, all persons associated with your partnership may achieve maximum benefit without experiencing undue risk or potential harm. To some people, this may seem pretty obvious, but I really want to bring this to light because you never know that there may be one particular person you know who's not necessarily working in a safe environment, and they feel entitled or obligated to be working under these poor conditions simply because it's something they need to do. However, they are entitled to having that sense of legal responsibility to know that they deserve a little better than that. As a community-based learner, you need to make good ethical and legal decisions that are consistent with and further the shared vision of the service learning effort. You are also responsible for negotiating time and time management issues. And we actually have our field study director here, who I interned for, and I'm sure that she could probably tell us a whole lot about how this could become essentially something that is very problematic between the field study student and their community partner. Many community partners identify students' failure to manage their time well and the resulting difficulty this causes in their partnerships as the greatest challenge they encounter. This is saying that if a student is not responsible enough to manage their time accordingly, and then that irresponsibility kind of shows in their work ethic, that could potentially be very problematic for the field study site that they're interning for, and that could potentially be one of the greatest challenges that they face. So it's very important to keep this in mind and know that it's really important to manage your time before you actually engage with your site. And another sort of responsible thing that we need to keep track of is being sure that we are responsible for our learning. Another responsibility to consider is the responsibility to learn in this non-traditional learning environment through engaging with the community, dialoguing with others, reflecting on how your work connects to the content of your course, larger societal and political issues, and your own sense of self. These are all points that you could potentially touch on with your field study experience. And I would argue that if you are going through this experience and that if you do want to have a successful outcome, it is your responsibility to make sure that you are engaging, you are having that dialogue, and that you are reflecting. That is the purpose of the program if you want to make a change and if you want to be successful with it. Lastly, one of the things that I want to touch on are your rights. Now, in your packets today, you did receive some info regarding your rights, but again, this is something that I do want to pinpoint. Your rights in the community setting are also worth examining. Your community partner is responsible for creating an environment in which it is possible for you to learn through serving, an environment in which you may use what you know for the benefit of yourself and others. It is your right as a field studies student to know that you are potentially working with an organization that's going to make change. And not just that, but it is also your responsibility to know that your skills are being used for something worthwhile, and that at the same time they are benefiting from you and that you're benefiting from them. Again, this goes back to solidarity. This environment must be free from the kinds of threats that prevent learning through serving from taking place, particularly sexual and other forms of harassment based on discrimination. I believe this is the last slide, but as a speaker today and for those students who are in attendance, I do want to wish you all the best in your field study experience. I'm not sure if you're currently taking it, if you plan on taking it, or if it's something that you've already experienced, but I want to wish you all the best, particularly if you haven't started with your field study. My advice is to kind of be conscious about the dates in which you should be applying, and not just that, but do a lot of preparation before that. You want to make sure that you're working with a site in which you can incorporate your major, your interests, what it is that you want to do. And the School of Social Ecology offers a variety of workshops and programs and stuff of that nature, like this conference, to help you kind of know what it is that you're trying to engage with, and we can help you try and create those connections. Remember to enter and engage appropriately. And with that being said, there's one last point that I didn't touch on, and the reason I didn't is because, again, our experiences as field study range drastically depending on the major and the student and all that. But the last point is that you must also be sure to exit responsibly and appropriately, meaning that it is a process, and based from the research that I collected in order to present this workshop, it's as simple as memorizing the 3 E's, and I'm going to refer to them as the triple E's. It is your responsibility to make sure that you're entering, engaging, and exiting these field study sites appropriately. And with that being said, I didn't quite touch on exiting today, but it is important that you do engage and enter correctly so that you leave a good impression, and then when you do exit, you have some experience that is worthwhile to you, something you could potentially put in a resume or some sort of experience. Maybe your paper was significantly something that you put a lot of effort in and that you are very proud of, and it serves as the research that you have done and something that you could continue carrying with you for the rest of your professional career. I want to take a minute to address my source. So my biggest source, and I pulled a lot from it, it's called Learning Through Serving, and this is a student guidebook for service learning and civic engagement across academic disciplines and cultural communities. This is the 2nd edition book. It is by Christine Kress, and the publisher is Stylus. So I do want to take a second to thank them for providing that information to us today. And I'm actually going to end my workshop here. I do feel that I'm possibly ending really early, but I do want to open it up to any questions that I feel I might be able to help with. Are there any questions? No? Yes?
The community partners that are attending today, are those the ones that are currently active?
Yes, all the community partners that you do find in your pamphlet today, those will be attending at the times that are indicated in the program, and those are all active. And one thing I could say as a student is that it is important to go and check out, walk around. We are going to have some pretty neat activities today. One of those is the Speed Connections. And so you'll actually have an opportunity to represent students of social ecology as you talk to faculty and community partners. And we can have discussions today about if say you're confused about something or you would like some clarity, you can actually address those issues or those questions that you have today during our Speed Connections activity. Because again, it's very unique and it's very special in that it is kind of like speed dating. Say you have a question, you ask it to them. Or if they want to, again, going back to the solidarity thing, if they want to learn a little bit more about your perspectives as the students, they will be asking you questions as well. And this is a really cool thing because if you do manage to create a good connection today, then this could potentially be your field study site when it is your time to tackle that SU 195. Yes, Ashley?
I don't know if I heard, this is just a sampling, this is about 10% of our community partners.
Yes.
We have over 225 that are actually active.
There's, again, over 200 of them. You can actually find a field study catalog online in the social ecology website. And it is really important to check that out. And like one of our keynote mentioned today, you should definitely plan accordingly and do allow yourself a lot of prep time. I understand you're new, correct? You came in as a transfer. You could potentially leave your field study up until your last year, your fourth year. But one thing I would recommend personally is maybe allowing the summertime for you to really look at the sites that you want to potentially work with. I'm not sure what your major is, but say you're working with CLS, you can look at the field study site and it'll actually indicate which sites go best with the majors. Because you have something like the police department, or you have something like where I'm currently doing my field study with the Disability Services Center, and that's more like education and counseling. So it varies tremendously, but it's so broad that is actually the reason why we have 200 plus sites. And if you go to the catalog, each of these sites has a description so that you could familiarize yourself with it. And when you go into it, it's kind of like a job interview, but again, you're benefiting so much from it that you should also go into it and be sure that you're asking questions. Make sure that you know what your expectations are when you go into field study. Know what your hours are going to be like, know what the environment's going to be like. In some cases, you're also free to actually go and check out the community partner site for yourself and see if that's potentially something you want to do or not. And again, this is really cool because as students, we don't necessarily have opportunities to take advantages of these experiences. Another activity that is in store for us today with this conference is the meet and greet. That's actually what kind of pushed me to start my internship with the field study program. Is these meet and greets have a huge potential to make connections because essentially we're gonna have, like Ashley mentioned, only 10% of the community partners be here to be able to represent their particular sites. But when you go to these meet and greets, you may even open up your mind to something that you wouldn't really consider, something like working with Kid City, where they like work with kids and they work in a low-income community, and maybe that's not something you had in mind for yourself, but you see that they are very engaged and that they are very active in something that to you might potentially, you might make a connection with them, and then you might change your mind and go into that field study opportunity. So it is really important that you engage with these field study meet and greets, and that's going to be scheduled on around lunchtime, around noon today. So I do encourage you to stick around and to also tell your friends about the importance of these conferences and workshops and so on. Are there any other questions? Yes?
How many units do you recommend we take with field study?
As it is, this is probably a little more technical, and maybe Ashley could touch on it.
Field study, to graduate, you need 4 units. But it really depends on one of the things with field study is deciding how you want to use field study. Yes, it is an academic requirement, but it's also an opportunity. So you can take field study for up to 24 units over the course of being an undergraduate, but you're required to do 4 units. Depending on your particular situation, you may want to do two quarters of 2 units. That would get you your 4 units, which is 5 hours or 50 hours a quarter During the summer, you only have an option of 4 or 8 units if you're doing summer, though, so keep that in mind. Summer's either 20 or 40 hours a week, because it's 5 weeks. But it really depends on how you want to do field study, what you want to do, what fits with your constraints, but also your interest in your field study side as well. Most students, as you heard from Jacqueline earlier, really do seem to benefit from a longer period of field study, from doing 2 field studies or 2 quarters of field study, whether they do it for 4 units both quarters or not. That longer relationship has really meant some much more engaging work and things like that.
And we will have an activity today or a workshop regarding the advanced field study, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So that's something that you're interested in, and this is a really cool experience, is that you can potentially do a full year with your site. And if this is something that you're particularly interested, I would recommend that you go to that workshop, because the longer the connection you make, the more potential you have to create change. Actually my co-intern, and she's a close friend of mine, she's engaged with a full year of field study right now. She's in the advanced field study program. And I also happen to know a couple other people who are in it as well. And I can say that it is a pretty cool thing you could potentially do with your time here at UCI. And it's definitely something you can take advantage of. So be sure to check out that workshop if that's something that may interest you. You also have the alternative. Again, I came in as a transfer. This is my last quarter. But I would encourage you all to do it earlier, because again, you're not limited to those 4 units, those 100 hours. You're not limited to one community partner. You can actually do your first 4 units, which are required in one particular site. And if you liked it a lot, you could actually do another 4 units for another site, and so on, until you reach the 24 units. And if you find that time is an issue, you can also divide those units and reduce those hours for each quarter. So again, you have a lot of options, and if you do have any questions, it's important that you go to Social Ecology 1, you set an appointment, and that you talk to someone, and we can help you figure something out. Are there any other questions? Is that good? All right, once again, thank you all so much for your time. It was a pleasure doing this for y'all, and be sure to stick around for the rest of the conference and check out some of the activities we have lined up today. Thank you.